Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, using unproven and poorly structured plans that can really cost you. Part 4 of our series on asset and wealth preservation for business owners with Ike Debji, attorney and asset protection specialist. Well, welcome to part 4 of our series. Ike, I have to say, when I'm thinking about different aspects of the law that we've been talking about, how can I position myself? How can I talk about this? I always think, wow, is there a lot of money involved in my attorneys here that I have to really put this together? You know, I mean, am I going to spend a lot of money to defend myself in the ways that we're talking about in the last 3 segments? I mean, is that a lot of money we're talking about?
Well, it depends, Steve. In some cases, there is a significant investment that needs to be made. And really, that investment is obviously determined on what the person has and what needs to be done, right? So maybe somebody whose assets are very cleanly divided between a bunch of equity in their home and a bunch of money in their bank, they might only need 2 or 3 tools. Somebody who owns a business, has a couple of pieces of investment real estate, has money in the bank, has assets that are in different forms, is going to need a plan that looks a little bit more complex. Most importantly, though, when we talk about cost, we should talk about value. And I can tell you, dollar for dollar, planning against problems, identifying risks and managing them, managing risks instead of managing crisis after something bad happens, is always cheaper, more predictable, and more effective. Even if you have to litigate after something bad has happened, there's always a 50-50 shot that you could lose. If we've identified as many of these problems as we can and limited any exposure before anything bad happens, we're already ahead of the game. And that's why we do what we do.
Well, I know a lot of people that, especially in this time of the year, they're doing tax kind of planning, and it turns out a lot of times to be a scam. Sometimes we're looking at people pushing the bulk of their assets to relatives, like their children, their wife. They're trying to divest themselves. But somehow, some way, they think in that they've done that brings a comfort and a solace of financial security.
We see that a lot, and this is an amateur sort of do-it-yourself asset protection strategy. We see this especially among married couples who have different levels of liability. Maybe one spouse is a high-risk professional like a physician, and maybe the other spouse stays at home, right? So the high-risk physician may say, I'm going to give all of these assets to my spouse, and they're going to be titled solely in my spouse's name. And therefore, if I get sued, no one can reach them. Or in some cases, they'll give it to a child or somebody else. And there's several different problems with that, and we'll go down a list, and I think this will be very clear and for your viewers to understand, very simple. Number one, what you have done, and even if they're right, even if I have high liability and you have low liability, and I push an asset across the table and put it in your name, we've reduced maybe the exposure, but we've also just exchanged liability. So maybe it's not subject to my liability, but it's still completely subject to yours. So if you go out and get into a lawsuit or a car accident or have some other exposure, it's accessible that way. Also, if the spouse who is the property owner divorces you, and you have already given them that property, and that is legally their separate property because you went through the legal process that was required to state it that way, then that money is gone in whatever form it was, whether it was the house or the investment accounts or the vacation home or whatever it is that we're talking about that was transferred from one spouse to another. So you are then subjecting that should have been divided under the marital community to being their separate property that won't be counted.
So before you even get to the divorce, it's separate property, not even part, even in our state of community property, community property state, that's actually their separate property.
Right, because in many cases, these people think they're doing the right thing and go through a number of formal legal processes, including an antenuptial agreement, a postnuptial agreement, and other things, to make it very clear that it's legally distinct. Now, we've also seen this problem where we have parents...
Excuse me, though. Does that work? Pre and post, does it actually work though?
It does work if it's done right and executed the right way. Yeah, absolutely, it can work to make those transfers. And it can also be an effective asset protection strategy. But as I said, it exposes the person who is giving up those rights to a couple of different new problems. One is the person you gave the property to leaves you, if it's a spouse. The other one is, what if that person dies? Does that person have estate planning in place that says that asset becomes yours again? Or does it go to somebody else and you lose it forever? Okay, so a lot of details need to be addressed, and transferring assets among and between family members in and of itself, just that, is not an effective asset protection strategy. We've also seen a case where we had a couple that was a two-physician couple that gave their multi-million-dollar home on paper to their 18-year-old son because they were high risk and he was low risk, until the day he went out and killed someone in a car accident. And the only asset that young man owned was this couple's multi-million-dollar home, their dream home that they had worked for their whole lives, that they had paid for, and that was also part of their retirement strategy. When we retire, we're going to sell the big house, we're going to downsize, we're going to pull a couple $1 million out of it, until Junior killed someone with the car, and we lost that too. So again, another way that simply playing hot potato is not a good asset protection plan.
Well, when we're using, I mean, a lot of people, we think, when I see the letter JD behind the person's name, that they know all these things that we're talking about. So if I'm doing estate planning, probate protection, doing all the kind of asset preservation, I'm assuming this guy knows what he's talking about. I've just seen, especially now with I have tax scams. Now I have this thing of like, I do the full package. I give you your will, your revocable trust. It's all packaged one way, or you go to LegalZoom or whatever, right? It all seems to be kind of packaged under one single shingle, and you get it done, you sign the check, and you're done. But when you talk like this, it says this is all going to get undone.
It's not going to get undone in that sense. Because remember, if somebody comes in with an estate plan, that is a core part of any asset protection plan as well. We do need to know what happens when that person dies. And in many cases, the people that we're working with or trying to protect are doing all this hard work their whole life for their family. So yes, we've got to have that estate plan. We also have to know what that estate plan does and doesn't do. So you made a reference earlier to talking to a lawyer and thinking that that person, because you talk to a lawyer, knows everything that you need them to know. And that's unfortunately not the case. It can't be the case. We cannot be experts at everything. Look, I'm the first one to say that despite the fact that this is all I've done every day for 14 years, on a good day, I'm good at one thing. I'm an asset protection attorney. That's my daily practice. That doesn't make me a divorce attorney. It doesn't make me a bankruptcy attorney. It doesn't make me lots of other things. And when I see a client needs help in those areas, we bring in other people that need that help. So the fact that you're talking to an attorney doesn't mean that they know everything they need to know. And you made a reference to using tools and strategies that aren't well proven. And this is an especially important issue at this time of year, because right before tax time, we start seeing a lot of unscrupulous planners and promoters. And planners, let's say, are people who are licensed and do this professionally every day. And promoters are typically resellers of kits or strategies or books or DVDs that don't actually offer professional advice, don't have any malpractice insurance, don't have any liability for not giving you the right advice when they should have. And so we see a lot of tax fraud disguised as asset protection planning at this time of year, including the gifting strategy that we were talking about, where I'm going to give my property to A, or to my wife, to my child, whatever, to my husband, whatever it is, to get that out of the way. Remember that any gift like that also has to be accompanied by some paperwork called a gift tax return. Any gift of any property worth over, let's call it roughly $15,000, you have to fill out a form and fill out a gift tax return. So if the asset you're transferring, if it's a home or a piece of real estate or an investment account, has to be memorialized that way. If you don't, the gift is incomplete. And even if there is a problem, the other party will simply ask, well, great, you gave your house to your 22-year-old son. Did you fill out a gift tax return when you gave him that $400,000 asset? And if the answer is no, well, then the gift is not complete and you committed tax fraud.
To me, this is all, this is all stunning. Our audience is full of people that are just normal consumers that have some wealth, have some money, have some assets. Many of them are small business owners. America's comprised of 70% of our businesses are small business owners. If you're saying, Steve, when I hear this, I want you to go out to his site. You need to tour his site, proassetprotection.com. Look at Ag's site. It could address things that you haven't thought about. Listen, don't forget to watch our part 5 of our series on asset wealth preservation for business owners. Relying on inadequate coverage and insurance alone could be a false security. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check your tax consultant, legal counsel, and financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.